On July 24th, this committee passed a sweeping accountability motion on this $9 million condo purchase for a Liberal insider during a cost of living crisis here in Canada. And then the following day, you issued a bogus correction to your June 17th email. And in that correction, you say that neither the head of mission was, and you say PRNMY nor CNGNY was part of the selection or approval process for the overall process or the property purchase. And so just so we're clear, you wrote this email that I'm referring to from July 25th, 2024, and you wrote the email that I previously referenced on June 17th, 2024. Those, I accurately quoted you in both?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I drafted those emails.
Okay. So in the first email, ma'am, you say both CNGNY, HOM, and staff have been instrumental throughout the process, with the HOM providing the green light for the selection of the new residents. That's not a typo. It's not a comma instead of a semicolon. That's very deliberate language. You're the head of mission providing the green light. Who instructed you to issue the correction that you issued on the 25th, the day after the motion was passed by the committee?
Mr. Chair, no one instructed me to make a correction.
Okay, so you'll have to elaborate, ma'am. The timeline is beyond curious. June 17th, you explicitly say the head of mission greenlit the project. July 24th, the committee issues the invitation for Mr. Clark to appear, and the next day, you suddenly, your mind is cast back more than a month to issue a correction to the email that you sent, just of your own volition.
Mr. Chair, as I said in my opening remarks, the term green light, well, first I think it's important to remember the context in which the first email was drafted.
With all due respect, ma'am, the question was about the genesis of the so-called correction email that you sent. Did you do this entirely of your own undertaking without discussion, consultation, or instruction with anyone?
Mr. Chair, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, I work with the best available information provided at the time. After issuing the initial June 15th or 17th email that was, as I mentioned, an initial overview, the Office of the Associate requested the leads to go through and pull together a more detailed chronology of events. And once that information was available, I relayed that information to the Minister's office. No one asked me to correct anything. I relayed the best available information that was presented to me at the time.
Who told you that Mr. Clark was not involved?
Mr. Chair, the records from the property branch demonstrated that the Consul General was aware of the process, but not involved or in a decision-making role.
Yeah, I've got to tell you that's quite the reversal. You effectively swallowed yourself whole in this correction that you issued within a day of this committee having Mr. Clark ordering him to appear. And I'm just going to quote you back to yourself. The head of mission providing the green light for the selection of the new residents. That was based on the best available information that was provided to you at the time. But the information that you received a month later, a day after this committee passed the motion, is a complete reversal of that. Will you table for this committee all correspondence, written, electronic, or otherwise, related to this issue, and specifically to the July 25th subject matter that you write on?
Mr. Chair, of course, I'm happy to provide
Thank you very much.
Material that would be useful.
Thank you. And our committee has passed a motion. We require any requested documents within 3 weeks.
Shin, you said you receive information from subject matter experts. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So you insert the information from the subject matter experts. You are not the subject matter expert. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
So that means, respectfully, that on the $9 million condo, you are not the expert.
That would be accurate, Mr. Chair.
So you received information from the experts before you sent this email on June the 17th. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, in compiling the information for the June 17th email,
It came from the experts.
That came from our property branch, yes.
So you just testified that you issued a correction to your email, and so the story that you've told today doesn't add up, just like the two emails that you've sent that don't add up. You're saying two contradictory things. That you only receive, that you only report the info that you receive, but on July 25th, you arrived at a conclusion on your own, absent the other information. So if the subject matter experts told you in June that, to use your words, that the head of mission providing the green light for the selection of the new residents, if that's what the experts told you, if you're just air traffic control and you just landed the information in the document, well, where did the new information come from? This is what doesn't make sense. Which subject matter expert told you on July 25th, the day after a standing committee of the House of Commons launched an investigation into this $9 million condo, which expert told you that Mr. Clark didn't have anything to do with it? Their name.
Mr. Chair, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, the experts have already been stated. Mr. Robin Dubois, who is the Assistant Deputy Minister for Property, and his team. And just to clarify that the request for the chronology and the information that was provided in that quite fulsome email was requested. That request had been made.
Yeah, when? On what date? On what date was the request made for the chronology from the minister's office?
Mr. Chair, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, following the initial information that was provided to the minister's office on June 17th, the Office of the Associate engaged with my colleagues in Property Branch and asked them to pull together the more fulsome explanation.
Ma'am, what date did you get the request?
Mr. Chair, I would have to go back. I don't have a date off the top of my head.
Okay, we're going to need you to table it because it just seems. And do you agree to table that with the committee?
Of course.
Okay, so it seems incredible. Like, what a coincidence that you get the information from the experts and then you circulate that in the department, and a correction is issued only after just a happenstance conversation with the minister's office. And suddenly the head of mission is no longer giving the green light. Like that simply does not add up. It's absolutely not believable. And in the absence of proof, of proof of what you're saying, it appears that you're misleading us today. Because we have your own words. We have your own words making the assertion that the green light was given by the head of mission, by Tom Clark, to buy a $9 million condo. After the Treasury Board changed the rules to allow for purchases of less than $10 million without cabinet approval. It's like this perfect puzzle was put together, and the only interruption was a standing committee started an investigation, and suddenly a correction needs to be made. Does that sound believable to you? Does this presentation of facts sound believable to you? What you say on June 17th is one thing, and then of your own volition, without any new information, at the end of July, you say the complete opposite. You assert the complete opposite without evidence that what you're asserting is true.
Mr. Chair, it would be inaccurate to say that there was no new information presented. As I have said from the outset, the email provided on June 17th was very much an initial overview, not intended to capture everything and focus specifically on the sale.
From an overview perspective,
that is our time.
From an overview perspective, you said Tom Clark gave the green light, and you only changed your story after an investigation was launched. That's the bottom line.
Thank you.
I want to go back to the email that you sent on July 25th. And in that email, you state that the reason for this update email was because of a conversation between Minister Jolie's Chief of Staff, Peter Wilkinson, and the Chief of Staff of the Deputy Minister, Carolina Gui. And I'm going to quote what you wrote at the top of your email. Peter, following your conversation with Carolina, and further to my email of June 17th below, I am writing to provide additional information on the purchase of a new official residence for the consulate in New York. I think we may have found the subject expert that you have referenced in your testimony earlier in this meeting in regards to who advised you on what should be in the updated email, and that would appear to be Mr. Wilkinson in conversation with Carolina Guay. So, and I hope I'm saying her last name right. So I guess I'm going to give you one more opportunity to tell this committee, did anyone in the minister's office, anyone at any level in the minister's office, directly or indirectly ask you to provide an update and to include this information in it?
Mr. Chair, as I mentioned in my opening statement, the email that I provided on June 17th was an initial email to the minister's office.
That's not what I asked. I asked, did anyone in the minister's office ask you directly or indirectly to provide the information that you included in this summary?
Mr. Chair, unequivocally, no. There was no instruction on what to include. We were providing information to the minister's office. The minister's office had asked for what was the rationale and the business case for the sale of the original property purchased in 1961 and asked if the head of mission was aware.
Okay. I do have the email in front of me. When did the conversation between Peter Wilkinson and Carolina Guay take place?
Mr. Chair, with apologies, I don't have that information top of mind. I would need to go back and consult with the individuals in question, as I wasn't in that conversation.
But it certainly would have happened sometime between the June 17th and the email that you sent. And I'm going to assume that it probably took place much closer to the July 25th date than it did to the June 17th date.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Ms. Nicholson, it just seems very obvious that the trigger was pulled on buying the $9 million condo immediately after the Prime Minister visited Mr. Clark in New York. It seems very obvious. And as well, it seems that Mr. Clark, as well as the department, put a lot of stock in the listing price. It's just not reasonable. It's not a good accounting practice at all, but unfortunately one that the government uses consistently to count on something before it is sold. It's just accounting is not done this way. Reconciling a budget is not done this way, and the government should not be conducting their business in this way as well. It's incredibly concerning that it seems that you've lied about changing this email, changing the terminology within the email. It just seems very clear that you're not being truthful with the committee today. We just don't know who directed you to speak these truths today to this committee and to Canadians. There have been multiple scandals where the minister said she wasn't informed about things. There's the $9 million purchase on Billionaires Row. There is the warship that docked in Havana alongside Russian ships. She said she didn't know about that. And in each of these instances, including the purchase of the $9 million condo on Billionaires Row, she said that she wasn't informed. Yet all of a sudden, something goes wrong in the media or then in this committee. And then she is informed. She's informed at this time. So what you're saying today doesn't add up. What the minister is saying doesn't add up. It shows competence or lying. One of the two things. And Canadians expect their minister to know what is going on, and they expect their minister, their government, and the government's officials, no matter at what level, not to lie. So we require more information, Mr. Chair. And with this information that we are not uncovering today, I wish we could say we are uncovering and not Governing, I would like to move the following motion: that in regards to the committee's ongoing study of the purchase of the new official residence for the Consul General, New York, the committee invite former Chief of Staff to Minister Jolie, Peter Wilkinson, former Chief of Staff of Foreign Affairs, Deputy Minister Carolina Guy, and Property Branch ADM, Robin Dubois, and Director General of Policy and Planning, Frank, I'm not sure if that's Monsieur or Madame, as referred to by the witness here today. But it's clear we're not getting the answers. Certainly. It's clear we are not getting the answers that we require to, first of all, determine how the minister implicates herself into these significant decisions, and then as well the inconsistency that we've seen with the wording within the email and the timing around the email here today, Mr. Chair. And so as such, I'm putting this motion forward to call these further witnesses. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Brock, you are correct. You had your hand up. I apologize. We're not voting on it yet. You're up on Mrs. Kusi's motion.
Thank you, Chair. I apologize that I arrived literally at the tail end of this particular important meeting, but I am familiar with the evidence from Ms. Nicholson. Thank you for your attendance. I just want to reiterate the extreme importance regarding the content of my colleague Ms. Kusi's motion. This saga seems to create different layers of complexity. Finger pointing, denials, mistruths, exaggerations of the truth. It's hard for this committee to determine who is telling the truth, and I understand the evidence we've heard today from Ms. Nicholson is she wants to assign herself full responsibility for attributing input directly from Mr. Clark in the acquisition of this $9 million condominium on Billionaires Row. I find that really hard to believe, given the explicit language used. This wasn't a typo scenario. It was very, very specific that Mr. Clark did have his hands all over the acquisition of this particular unit. And the evidence that we have heard so far in this particular committee seems to lead credence to his involvement. I remark and recall just how ridiculous Mr. Clark's statement was, to the effect that when he was invited for the first time to tour this condominium with a real estate agent, he had the audacity to challenge me and suggest to this committee that he walked in with the real estate agent who listed it and sold it to the government of Canada, and not a word was spoken. The two of them walked around aimlessly, not pointing out features, not communicating with each other, simply observing. That is absolutely ridiculous in the extreme. For someone to tour a property and not being guided by an agent, it only leads credence to the fact that Mr. Clark had previous knowledge about this unit, had input with respect to the acquisition of this unit. So we need to hear from further individuals to shed truth on what really transpired. I understand that the minister is about to appear to answer to these questions. I read recently in the press that her office is denying that they were even made aware that this condominium was located on Billionaires Row. Again, I find that extremely hard to believe. The minister has a penchant for basically denying anything that seems to be controversial in her portfolio, which begs the question as to who really is telling the truth. So for all of those reasons, Mr. Chair, having more witnesses coming to this committee to shed more light on the process and the acquisition of this most extravagant condominium on Billionaires Row is something that Canadians want a clear answer on at a time when we have millions of Canadians lining up at food banks, at a time when we have millions of Canadians unable to make a down payment to purchase a home, when we have millions of Canadians defaulting on mortgages, when we have all kinds of people never even thinking about acquiring the Canadian dream of home ownership, and we have Justin Trudeau awarding a buddy of his from the media, Tom Clark, of a $9 million condominium at a time when we have a number of major crises in this country. Canadians are fed up. They want this committee to get to the truth, and that's exactly what we plan on doing. So I'll be supporting my colleague's motion. Thank you.
Great. So on Mr. Kuzmierczuk's amendment, which is, as mentioned, deleting the former chief of staff from the amendment. Someone wish to speak on it? Mrs. Kusi.
That is a ridiculous amendment, because in eliminating the former chief of staff, Mr. Wilkinson, he's the one who is named in the email. The point of this motion is to determine who directed the poor witness who is still sitting in front of us here today, Ms. Nicholson, to use the terminology green light to provide the correctional email. Where did that come from? This motion is moot without Mr. Wilkinson, so we cannot support this amendment. Thank you, Chair.
Mrs. Atwin on the amendment.
So again, it just speaking to the precedent that we've said that we don't call chiefs of staff. Again, we know the ministers are accountable to their staff. The minister is coming. She will answer the questions that we need. But what we have again is we've the other two people who are listed. I think it is important to hear from them. We've heard testimony today that speaks to their potential additional information that could inform the conversation that occurred that led to the second email. And so we're very much amenable to that. But again, the chief of staff to the minister, I don't think is going to enrich, because she's going to be the one to speak on behalf and to represent her team. So based on that, I support the amendment for sure, and I wouldn't be supportive without that. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Brock, on the amendment.
Chair, and to my colleague, Ms. Atwin, I don't know what parliamentary precedent she is referring to, but chief of staffs are not immune. Current chief of staffs, former chiefs of staffs are not immune from attending at committee. Case in point, we had Katie Telford, the Prime Minister's chief of staff, attend not too long ago for a 2-hour meeting. Doesn't get much higher than Katie Telford. So again, I challenge Ms. Atwin to provide some evidence of some parliamentary precedent that has been set that the Conservatives are no longer following.
Yeah.
We're clear on the amendment, which is eliminating Mr. Peter Wilkinson from Mrs. Kusi's amendment, our motion.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Alors, Madame Atwin,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Baines,
Yes.
Mr. Johari,
Yes.
Mr. Kuzmierczuk,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Ms. Block,
No.
Mr. Brock,
No.
Ms. Kusi,
Opposed.
Madame Vignola,
Pour.
Mr. Backrack. Okay, so yeas 6, and nays contre, 4, 4.
So the amendment carries. So we're back